my advice would be is just whatever you do, figure out how you sound as a player through whatever guitar at any price point, a $200 Les Paul or a Murphy Lab. Okay, you're going to sound like yourself.
Yes.
And figure out what gain structure you like, figure out what kind of effects that you want, and figure out the kind of mid structure, if you like the amps to sag, if you like them really stout. Once you know what you don't want, it's really simple to find affordable gear that meets your criteria.
That's the golden phrase. Mm-hmm. Once you know what you don't want.
Once you know what you don't want.
Yeah. Especially with all the choices and the variables out there now.
Yeah.
Because, I was talking about this with you earlier where I feel like we're all stuck in this this phase of where it's like, I don't know if I want to jump. I can't make the jump yet because I'm crippled by the amount of decisions and the amount of things that are in front of my face. Man, when I first bought a Tube Screamer, I did not understand it, or I just didn't like it. I had a clean amp. I didn't know the whole thing about overdriving an amp or anything. So I was like, love Stevie Ray. He's got a Tube Screamer, I heard. Let's get one. And it was just kind of like, how do I get Stevie Ray out of that with my little Fender solid state amp or whatever it was at the time, But the choices were only so many, man.
Yeah, it's very difficult to make that leap of because guitar players tend to be so gear oriented.
Yeah.
Is I've seen, for example, that we were talking about the Dumble thing.
Yeah.
I've seen Robin Ford use the blonde 83 with the Dumbleator and the 212 212 cabinet cut with a super reverb, and it was ruling. It sounded like freaking Robin Ford.
Sure.
Ruling, the way you wanted to sound. The way you want Robin to sound. Conversely, I've been at festivals with him in Europe, and he had a rental twin and a rental super reverb, and it sounded ruling, just like Robin Ford.
Sure.
And when I plug into a Dumble, I don't sound like Robin Ford, but when he plugs into one, it's magic. Now, I'm not taking away the contributions of Alexander Dumble at all. He was a brilliant amp designer and changed the game. But again, it's like when I like to your point, when you bought your first Tube Screamer and you plugged it into your amp, and you're like I wanted to sound like Texas Flood.
Yeah,
that's not happening.
It's not happening,
because this isn't ready.
Right.
It's the gear becomes legendary because it's a combination of what was used, who played it, the timing, and the songs that were that made the tone on those particular songs.
Yes. Now, the other flip side, when you're trying to emulate or when you're trying to chase after someone's special tone or what they were using, there's another side that I've and a lot of us have fallen into where it's you should have a mixture of a bunch of things so you're ready for anything. Maybe it's the hired gun approach, or maybe it's the session player approach where it's like, well, I should have, this type of British inspired amp or an American voiced amp, or I've got, a few overdrives just in case something happens, and I got to build a big board now because, I want to be ready for anything. Now, then there's also that camp.
Yeah. There's a lot. I mean, like one of the last places you'll see the last vestiges of the session rigs of LA in the 80s is in Nashville. Yeah. Because they have to cover so many bases. They had the 5 heads in a rack, and it's a bassman, and it's a matchless, it's a Marshall, it's this, and then because they're there as work for hire for a producer who sometimes knows exactly what he wants, sometimes has no clue what he wants or they want, or whoever he or she's producing, and you have to be ready for that, for decisiveness and also indecisiveness. It's like sometimes you have to lead a horse to water. It's like if a producer or someone saying, that I want that kind of like sparkly purple sound.
Yes.
Well, okay. Let me check my box to see if I have a sparkly purple.
Right. Right.
But the way my mind would read that would be, oh, you want a Vox? Get a Vox.
There you go.
So having that flavor is important. Now, if you're a session musician, if you're playing side gigs or you're in a band ensemble where you're covering a lot of bases, then having a wide variety of tools is extremely important because you never know what's going to be asked of you next. with that said, a guitar player can justify any purchase. Well, maybe I better get that amp because I never know when somebody's going to ask me for that Latvian folk music tone
Dude,
from the 1960s.
Yes.
You're justifying your addiction with nonsense, but it's important to have a good wide variety. Now, if you're a solo artist, that's a different thing.
Right, because you are having to hone in your particular sound and vibe. So that's a totally different thing there. But
well, BB was a solo artist.
Yeah.
BB King was a solo artist. So when BB King did, okay, he didn't have to go, well, maybe I need to maybe I need something twangier than that because BB was going to go. Doesn't matter what the song was.
And that wasn't even a thought.
Because he was a solo artist.
Right.
And Albert King was a solo artist.
Yeah.
Jimi Hendrix was a solo artist. They didn't approach it from a soup to nuts type of attitude. It's like I assert my sound and my vision at all times.
Yeah.
And that as far as gear is concerned, that simplifies things a lot.
It sure does. No, yeah, man, because I have been guilty of the chasing and then especially growing up here in LA, like you're trying to get gigs and all that too. So you're trying to be ready. Mm-hmm. And then you're also like, but I really love playing this. Mm-hmm. That maybe that's not happening right now. So, there's also like the trends and all that you're also, if you're coattailing on that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, it's also, it's a bit of Camellius Maximus.
Yeah.
It's like I gotta be pink now. I gotta be purple. I gotta be green. I gotta be whatever. It's like, and you don't want to go into somebody else's gig and be like, well, this is how I play, and you're not sympathetic to what the songs call for.
Sure.
Because you're not going to get the gig, or at least you're not going to keep the gig for very long.
Right.
Again, it's different as a solo artist because you're in charge of the entire big picture as a solo artist. Where if you're playing sessions or if you're in a band or a sideman, you're really there to recreate what's on the record, or come up with parts that elevate the song to a different level.
There you go.
Yeah.